Well, we had some sad news, very sad news, and I think we'd like to dedicate this episode of Stay on Track to former colleague and a former teammate of mine, Alex Zanardi, who sadly we lost. Great man, big heart, and a big talent.
Incredible what he did after his accident. Obviously, he was a lovely guy as well. So, Alex, you will be missed, and but never forgotten.
Absolutely. Welcome back to another episode of Stay on Track. Looking forward to this one because we have an exciting show today because we have a special guest who's going to be coming on, who we're going to be chatting to.
This will be our first ever guest.
Yes, it will be.
I'm so excited.
I'm very excited, yeah. Pierre Hamelin, who is Arvid Lindblad's engineer, but of course he's been through quite a good list of drivers, so we'll be speaking to him during this episode. So looking forward to that.
Nothing's happened since we've been away.
Well, excuse me, something has happened since we've been away.
What, the Miami Grand Prix?
Miami Grand Prix, yes.
I saw you doing that with your cap a moment ago.
Yes, winner's cap. Cap.
Now, you want me to ask you about the cap, don't you?
Yes, please.
Can I leave it till later?
No.
I'm supposed to ask Johnny why he's wearing a cap. Johnny, why are you wearing a cap?
Well, I'm wearing a cap because I was down in Miami over the Grand Prix. Weekend. Actually, I was there for 3 weeks. No, it was too much of a fact. It was too much traffic. You know what the traffic's like when it's a lot of traffic. So I didn't do that. My boss, Till from Lola, he invited me to his house. We went down there and actually watched the Grand Prix on the television, which was much better. But we were testing the Lola T70S.
Oh, can't you say?
I think there was in my hand.
How nice.
The Lola T70S. But while I was there, it was the Concourse Club.
Yeah.
A special little club just outside downtown Miami, and they had a little M2 BMW series that they do, and they invited myself. Helio Castroneves joined in as well. So anyway, I was there, and there was this race, and they
gave you a cap.
I have my cap because I'm a race winner.
It's a long way to go.
I'm a race winner. I'm happy.
You won a race.
I'm happy. I won a race. Yes.
And how long is it since you won a race?
Many years. many years. But all I would say about this victory, I think it was the best race that I've ever done.
Was it close?
No, it was, what was it?
Did you
controlled. It was controlled.
Anyone, you said Helio Castroneves?
Yeah, Helio was it. Yeah,
Castroneves.
He finished fourth. So I'll just throw that one in.
Anyone else in the race that we know?
Yeah, just a lot of other club members that were there. We're there as well. Yeah,
so Helio, if you're
15 of us,
if you're watching this, we'd love to have you on the show.
Yes,
and you can talk us through the exciting experience of being beaten by Johnny Herbert. I'm sure you probably don't want to mention it. Anyway.
Probably not. Probably not. So anyway, yes,
he has a nasty habit of winning races like that. Yes, he's very competitive. Well, well done. Are you going to keep that on the whole podcast? I am going to keep it on because I
feel quite proud about it.
Actually, it does look good on you.
Exactly. I think actually I should have entered Formula One. At 61 years old, because I don't think I've peaked.
If you can still do it, you can still do it, Johnny.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm impressed.
Well, I can at the moment, yeah. I'm going to do a bit of karting, I'm sure, sort of soon as well. So anyway, right, you were down in Miami as well.
I was there, watched the whole thing unfolding.
Right, before we go on, was it better?
Yeah, it was
From
better.
The TV, it was better.
It was better because he didn't get the
deployment
at the end of the straight
much
where they
better.
all slow down,
yeah,
and then go again. I mean, that didn't look good anywhere. But Miami, not a place that they need to harvest quite as much, or they can harvest enough there.
Sure.
So scavenge or harvest,
or
whatever it's called. So basically, it's not. It's a harvesting rich or re-energizing rich circuit apparently. So that's right. I actually did go round, so I'm quite excited because I got to do some hot laps.
Yeah.
So I was asked to do some hot laps. I was working with Williams there, and I took some guests around the circuit.
Right, cool.
And so I've actually been around the track because I've never been around it before.
And what was it like?
And scary. Quite honestly, I mean, to be in a road car,
yes,
there's a lot of blind, very fast. They call it a straight, but in a car without any downforce, you lift quite a lot for those big corners.
Sure.
And there's walls right by the edge of the track.
Yes, I've noticed the walls.
And blind corners. And but I had some fun doing that, which is you get me back in the. So you never know, Johnny. I might make a comeback as well.
No. Oh, yeah. Hello. I would did not expect
I might
to
nick
say
that
you're not
cap
going to do.
off of you.
You are not going to get a crash
Give me
helmet
that
on
cap.
again. You get away with it. You are not going to put a crash helmet on, are you? You're really not going to get
No, I'm
behind
not
the wheel
gonna
again.
do it.
No,
I'm
I
not
didn't think you were. You're just going to be on a golf course or surfing, something like that. Yes.
Yeah, it's the. I don't know. The thing is, if I go racing, then I'm just giving everyone an opportunity to beat me. And I just
go on, do it.
I'd rather deprive them of that opportunity.
I missed that opportunity.
You just want to have.
I do want to have a go.
No, you're not having any skin off my nose.
You're not going to give it.
Mate.
Oh, okay, typical. Right, let's talk about what we saw on track. Now we saw Antonelli do a really, really good job, and George suffered a little bit, didn't he?
Well, yeah. Again, you have to say that he was second fiddle in the Mercedes camp there, and Kimi is he's bubbling, overflowing with confidence now. And I have to say, I watched the last few laps of the race, and he was under pressure with, a very small gap to Lando. And I thought, he's going to crack. Eventually, he's going to make a mistake. He did do a slight lock-up, but it was very manageable. Yeah. And he did brilliantly to hold on to the end and looked every bit as someone who's capable of taking the pressure.
Yeah, I think pressure is going to be definitely one thing. It's a tricky track. You said about he had that little tiny lock up. But of course, we're going to a totally different track, Canada, next time out. And that is going to be something that's going to be very useful to having a real feel of what's happening on the pedals to what's happening on the track. Low downforce. So the cars generally move around, probably not as much as they used to back in our day. But it's still going to be a test. Now, it's going to be interesting to see, is this going to be where George is going to fight back? Because it's a track that he won last year, and it's a track that he seems to do well at. But it's damn important that he does do the job.
I heard this about, he's looking forward. I think he might have said it himself. He's looking forward to,
I'm sure he is,
to Canada. But I mean, why flag it up? You've got to be able to beat every other competitor on all the circuits that come up in every condition.
But is this him trying to say to Antonelli, hey, you watch what's going to happen this time out?
Well, I did an interview on another podcast, but with an ex Formula One driver called Juan Pablo Montoya, and he was making great play of this, because he identified the point that if it was him and he was Kimi Antonelli and George, everyone was saying it's going to be George's race, this one coming up, he would make an extra special effort, of course, to deprive him of that. Now, that's the thing, is you're setting yourself up. I don't know, mate. So George has to start, whatever. He's got to start turning it around and putting it back into the position that it looked like it was going to be in Australia and in the early part of the season, because he's either been tripped up, been a bit unlucky, but he's not managed to overcome Kimi's advantage, it appears.
But let's go back to last year. We had the same situation there, where Oscar was basically dominating proceedings, and how that swapped around.
Yeah.
So this thing is not, he's going to walk away with it. It doesn't work like that. Probably, if going back over the years, it's never really been a situation where you can dominate. It's very rare anyway. You can dominate through the whole season.
So he's had his little day in the sun, as he, Kimi, you think, and it's all going to be a little bit different when things settle down and George gets back to where he should be, and maybe knocking a few spots off him in a few races on the trot, and then the dream of becoming world champion. I thought it was all going to be so easy. Kimi Antonelli go, I'm leading the world championship, the youngest ever driver to lead the world championship.
Yeah.
This F1 lark is easy, that dream is going to go pop.
Yeah, well, well, again, he's got all the ingredients he needs to be able to make it happen. He's got Toto, because we know how much he's backed him even before he got into Formula One. He's got Bono, and with the experience that Bono's got, that's going to be something that's very important.
Yeah, so the race engineer. We're going to be talking about race engineers later in this episode.
As well, with an engineer, there's a mental side to it as well, that an engineer can be very, very powerful in getting the very best out of you. As long as you have that relationship, that you can discuss things and you can learn off of each other. And it's all about having the right positivity. And that's where Kimi has got it at the moment. George has it. It just hasn't quite come together for him for whatever reason. But it has to happen soon. It's really got to the whole synergy within his side of the pits has got to really start to work. And Canada is the place. He won last year. He's happy that he's going to that type of track. But it's not just about Canada. It's all the other races that he's got to be able to achieve what Kim is achieving at the moment.
But anyway, the game's afoot now, isn't it? We're off and running, and we've got a championship title fight, but we don't know who's going to be the contender, because actually McLaren suddenly appeared as well on the scene, back to where we expect to see them. They didn't win the race, and some may say they did a little bit of a mistake. By the pit stopping being sort of less than positive, which maybe gave the advantage to Kimi that they shouldn't have done. But anyway, they're back. They put on upgrades. They seem to work. Every time they put upgrades on the car, it seems to work, which is a sign that they've got all their correlation going. So they're making progress. But when we go to Canada, there's more upgrades going on everyone's cars, I think so. Yeah. But this is going to be the nature of the season, isn't it? That they're going to be evolving in the early part of the season as much as possible to gain those points that are on the table. Ferrari were good, but not
enough,
strong enough.
To get the top three for sure. No.
So we got an open, and of course, Max. You have to say they've done their upgrades to his liking, and it was something to do with steering. Apparently, they found something that they'd missed with his steering, the feel he was getting back. It sounds to me like that maybe some sort of flexing was going on in the chassis and the way they mounted it, because through the
steering itself. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I'm just reading between the lines a little bit, but Max wasn't getting the feedback from the car that he wanted. Now he's got it back and he was competitive. Not so good for Isack Hadjar this weekend. Yeah. And the gap to him started. I mean, now if Max has got the feel back, they were competitive, much more competitive. So you'd have to say, are Red Bull in long term the title hunt? Because we've seen him come from a long way back before.
Yes.
And Max I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But Isack, the gap was 8/10, I would say.
Yeah.
Nearly all the time.
Yeah, and it's a typical situation.
Which is a frightening gap as a racing driver.
Yes, but it's a typical situation of where the ceiling of the car suddenly sprung up to the next level or two. And that's where Max is just able to follow wherever that car goes. And then where Hadjar just seemed to struggle, as you say, that little bit more. I hope it's not the case. I hope it's just a one-off, because so far it's been a good start for him. But it can quite easily shift when, Max is in a car that he's comfortable with. And then those gaps, those 8/10 start happening too often.
I hope his fists have recovered from the bashing that he gave them when he had their off.
Yeah,
but
indeed. Yeah,
so it's tough times now for Isack.
Yeah,
up against a teammate like Max, but we'll see how that.
It's always going to be tough.
I think it's a great championship. The racing was. It's a championship setup, if you like, because we all said George would have him at the start of the year, and he's just, maybe this is a blip.
Yeah, maybe. Let's throw this one question in. You in 1996 with a fast-year driver, Jacques Villeneuve. So we've got two great drivers with Kimi and George. What's it like in a fight for the championship, like you had in '96?
Well, you have to keep your cool. As you said, it's not a straight line. It's not a straight line from beginning to end. Has Kimi at age 19 got the maturity to be able to see this through an entire campaign? We're going to find that out. George, you'd have to say, I still put my money on George having the ability to maintain an attack on the championship for an entire season. He's shown us he can do it. Last year, he was very consistent. And he's had a little bit of a time to think about what went down in Miami, but he couldn't find the pace in Miami. That's the worry is he just couldn't find what he needed there. But when you look across the garage, you're very much aware, as someone as George will be, that the new arrival, where is the top of this ascendance? What this ramp, this curve that is going on. First year, quite a lot of mistakes, occasionally okay.
Yeah.
Second year, winning races
consistently.
That's quite a steep curve.
Big.
George has been at it now. I mean, he's still a young driver, but he's been doing Formula One for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so you know that the new thing comes along, you have to stamp your authority on this. Otherwise, people very quickly just switch their allegiance to whatever's coming. It also is very important for the driver to give confidence to the people around him.
Yes,
You don't want to be walking into a garage and everyone's going, well, how is he? That's not a good place to be, because he needs his teams, his support network within there.
Yeah.
But of course, Toto is very pleased that he has taken a big gamble and signed a 19-year-old or 18-year-old and put him in a car when everyone said you're mad, and it's now coming good. And he made comments to that effect. Now that will be, he's never said anything quite so fulsome about George. George has always been, I always feel like George has always been the apprentice that has to prove himself. And
yes, continually.
And it seems like he responds. So the mood of his attitude, his mindset is going to be key to this when he goes into the garage, and he needs to be able to have the backing of his engineer.
Yes.
And you don't want the engineer to be going, now, George, this problem you had, you couldn't catch Kimmy last time. How do we fix it? You don't want to be in that place.
No.
Because that's everyone's feeling sorry for you. It's just the worst. So it's going to have to come from George.
So engineers, now you had the best, Adrian Newey.
Well, he was a designer.
Yes, but you had him on your side. He was there trying to aid you. There you go.
Yeah.
And this is my point, because he did a quote in his book. It was the most enjoyable year of my career. I think it's a misprint. I think it was. But that's what he said.
What were all the other years
that in
like
1996?
I mean, well, it's a nice thing to remember. If he's, saying that was an enjoyable work experience, then I don't know whether I can take some credit for that, or whether he's just mentioning that it just happened to be a good year. But
what was the relationship like with Adrian?
Well, he was the designer. He wasn't actually race engineer. Tim Preston was my race engineer, but Adrian decided to take a special interest in helping out, and of course, very glad he did.
Yeah.
But in actual one race, he actually was giving me strategy as well. So he was giving me lap time. That was the Canadian Grand Prix, oddly enough. So the story of that was it was an equal. There was no difference between one stop and two stops. So I said, well, I'll do whatever Jack decides. I'll do the opposite.
Right.
And so we pit stops come. You can't see the guy you race against. You have to be given the lap time.
Yeah.
And so it's quite physical. Canada. It's odd, isn't it? Because it's long straights, and you think you're sitting there not doing anything, but actually it's quite physical when you get to the chicanes and stuff, and it's always quite hot. So physically it's quite difficult, and he was giving me these lap times to my gap I had to get so that I'd be ahead when pit stops came. Yeah. Anyway, I won it by about 20 seconds. So he'd been giving me all these flipping lap times. I said, I was absolutely drained at the end of this race. I said, did you need to do that? I have plenty of margin. And he said, no, I just want to be sure.
Yeah.
He was, he knows drivers. So as a race engineer, he spent a lot of time in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And engineering people like Bobby Rahal and stuff like that. And so, but he understands what it's like to be in the cockpit.
Yeah.
So he understands the psychology. And so he knows that you have to kind of play tricks with drivers a little bit. It's a bit like have you seen the Willie T. Ribbs film?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a great bit where he's trying to qualify for Indy, and he's not getting there. He's got to go a bit faster, and then the guy who runs the team comes out and says, "We've got these tyres. We've been saving them back because they're magic tyres." Effectively. Anyway, so just put them on and you'll be fine. Anyway. So they gave him this yarn. Of course, the psychology was such that Willie qualified for the Indy 500 on them.
Yeah.
And there was nothing different about these tyres at all. So the engineer does play this game from time to time. You're vulnerable, aren't you, as a driver?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care who you are. Even if someone like Nigel Mansell appears very confident, or Ayrton Senna, they are all very sensitive.
Very.
And if a relationship is not right, then it's the driver's not going to go, the engineer's going to go. The relationship has to change, and they have to be with someone that they trust.
Yeah.
And trust is really everything.
Trust is everything, yes.
I completely trusted Adrian, so
yes. Yeah.
that helped enormously.
Yeah. The positivity that you have from all those people around you can be so powerful, but it can be so destructive at the same time if things aren't just quite where they need to be for you. And everybody's different. Not everybody's the same. You don't do the same thing for everybody. So that's something maybe we'll talk about a little bit later with Pierre. But I think that relationship is very important. I had a good relationship in Formula One. And again, that was with Tim Preston. Because when everything I'd done before, the radios were really bad back then. They crackled, and you could only speak more or less when you went past the pits. But they were just improving it a little bit, sort of in the 97, 98, something like that. And it was the first time I'd really had it where he was telling me, "You're doing a good job," just coming over the radio, very softly and calmly. And that was a positive thing again. Just having someone there supporting you and saying you're doing a good job. And I do remember Tim being a very powerful one on that. And Jock Clear. I remember when I was at Lotus when Jock started off.
Jock was interesting.
Yes.
Because he engineered Jack when I was in the championship. So I had Adrian Newey and Jack had Jock. And Jock's very competitive.
Very competitive.
But he was dealt, if you like, this guy, Jacques Villeneuve, who's new to F1 and had a lot of imaginative ideas about how he wanted the car to be.
Yeah.
And Jock's idea, basically response to that was give him what he wants, give him whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And if he likes it, then that's fine. And he had to fend off Patrick Head, who was sort of obviously inquiring as to what the hell they were getting up to a lot of the time. But Jock's answer to that was, happy driver is a quick driver.
Yeah. Didn't he have something with the paddles? Didn't he have? He sort of. We all did left and right, but he flicked it up and
probably changed everything.
He changed everything around.
If it was a mug, he'd say, "I want it upside down."
Yes.
He did honestly very
Jack. Yes.
Yeah.
Very much
sure about what he wanted, not necessarily whether it was the right thing or not. But anyway,
no.
But he got what he wanted, and it made him happy.
Yeah.
So, race engineer's job is a tricky one. But the bottom line is, if someone's quick, that's fine. It's whatever. Because the engineer's career goes up and down with the driver.
Yeah.
So they're very closely. It can get awkward if your career's not going up, things aren't going well. Then the engineer, sometimes can feel a little bit like they're on a losing wicket.
Yeah, I suppose that the one more recently where you hear that relationship, where there are literally fights over the radio, is obviously with Max and Lambiase. Yeah. Where they basically fought each other. But it's how that synergy worked with them. They would be able to get the best out of each other. Yes, they didn't always agree with each other, but that's how it worked. And it was so powerful, I thought, with how they were able to get the very, very best one out of the car, but secondly out of each other. And that was quite outstanding.
So this is it's like a marriage, isn't it?
Yeah.
In effect, you need someone to be able to stand up to, if someone like Max is very demanding, clearly.
Yeah.
And you need someone strong enough to be able to not stand against him, but to say, so Gianpiero is able to understand what Max is really saying, and get to the answer quickly for him, so that he's either calmed down or given the information he really needs. I wonder what it's like being an engineer for Fernando Alonso. I mean, there's hardly any need for an engineer, is there? I mean, Fernando Alonso tells you what to do, and you probably do it.
To a degree, to a degree. But again, it's just one of those things. You've got to put the right engineer with the right driver. It's not just everyone fits. It's having the right mentalities that will work for the engineer, for the driver, but probably most importantly for the team, to get the best out of everybody.
Well, that was fascinating about race engineers. And we're going to be back in part 3 with a real current race engineer. So welcome back. We are absolutely delighted to have in our studio race engineer to Arvid Lindblad from Racing Bulls, Pierre Hamelin. So welcome to the Stay on Track podcast. But you can go anywhere you like. You don't have to stay on the track. And don't be nervous.
He's not.
You are our first guest.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're nervous because it's our first guest.
I think we couldn't have got a better guest. It's going to be brilliant because we want to talk to you. We want to pick your brains. We want to help people understand this business of the guy who has the closest relationship during a race, at least, and over a race weekend, with the driver. And you've worked with some incredible names already. You have a list here of names.
I have a bit of a list of drivers I've worked with since I joined Toro Rosso at the time. Then it's become Alpha Tauri, Racing Bulls. We're obviously a place which kind of create talent to try to bring them up and hopefully one day to go to Red Bull Racing. So we have a good list, and obviously there's still a lot of them in the pit lane with us today.
There are. I'm going to go through the list as well because there's quite a few of them as well. We've got Daniel Kvyat right at the beginning, Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Riccardo, Liam Lawson, Isack Hadjar, Carlos Sainz, Brendan Hartley, Nick de Vries, and now Arvid Lindblad. So it's amazing that you've been part of bringing on the new talent. That must be so exciting to be a part of that.
Yes, and it's even better for me personally when I see these drivers going to Red Bull Racing on staying around, on having these podiums, on being so full of talent around other teams as well.
Yeah, and also you've got a massive advantage over someone like Pete Bonington, who's only had Lewis Hamilton, I think, and now Kimi Antonelli. You've had so many drivers. But of course, the interesting thing is you've had to build new relationships every time, and also learn about these guys and what makes them tick. And we're sort of interested in that bonding, that psychological thing, so that you can communicate and second guess what it is they need when they're out on the track in the heat of battle.
Sure. So before I start with that, maybe one thing I'd like to say is Racing Bulls as a team, obviously we are designed for this type of young drivers. Yeah. So in everything we do, in terms of the reporting, the way we structure our debrief, the way we structure our meetings with them, we try to make sure we always bring content which is relevant to them. We try not to make it overly complex, because engineers can very quickly go into big topics which are difficult to understand, even for me. So
you're not suggesting they're nerdy.
Some are in their specific areas.
Yes. Yeah.
So we as a team, I think we are really well organized to work with this type of drivers, which obviously come and are asking for experience. In terms of creating the bonding with a new driver or a young driver, so we have a bit of a checklist to start with, and we try to go through all the basics. That goes from what the car looks like, sporting regulations. We have to cover as many topics as we can: how to do a pit stop, how to do a start. These are the very basics we go through to begin with. We start from a technical side, if you want, before we go into the personality side of things.
But how flexible are you with each driver that you have? Because the characters are completely different. But sure. How do you work out what they need? Is that just the bonding you have when they go to the simulator to start with, or how does that work?
So what's important to start is to understand what the driver knows. I think you want to try to figure out how much you're going to have to help him in which area. Is it going to be for the sporting regulations that you have to be on it constantly to remind them what to do? Is it going to be on the technical side? So how does the car is set up? What is where are the springs? How do we change heave stiffness? What does an aeromap looks like, which is very important in our cars. So firstly, we try to understand, I wouldn't call it the weaknesses, but try to know what are the sticking points where you have to put more focus.
I'm not going to ask you to mention any names, but are there any of the drivers you've worked with who are really into the science of it, into the physics of it and the area? Do they strike you as people who are kind of, they want to be the engineer as well as the driver?
Yeah, it does happen. Actually, even more so this year, it's hard not to happen because of the power unit. As you know, the power unit this year is making a very big impact on the overall car performance, much more than the last 3 or 4 years. So it's important to not let the driver get too carried away in terms of the details of this. and to rely on us to help him. But it does happen, and it's important for us to filter out what we think is important, to try to bring them the right information at the right time, and not to overload them effectively.
Because there are other drivers who are not interested.
No, there are some. Yeah, there are some who don't work at it.
They just want to race,
work at it. Yes, they just want to sort of race.
I was thinking of Mick Hakkinen in McLaren when he was racing. He'd drive around every problem, and they'd be saying, "Can we do anything? And how can we go faster?" And he says, "I just go faster." Basically, that was his answer. Yes. I'll just drive harder.
Yes.
And they were trying to get it through to him that we can make the car different and help you, but he wasn't.
Yeah. And then Michael Schumacher would be the other way. He'd be going to try and find what he needed from all the sort of the team members. Is that something you try to teach them, to question what's happening?
Yes, so what we try to teach them to begin with is to not try to make too much of the conclusions. So like you say, sometimes a driver can tell you, I think we need to do this with the car. But it's never one thing. It's it could be the wind direction has changed, the track temperature has changed. It's never just one single element which goes wrong when we are not happy with something. So what we want to teach them is to just tell us their stories, just tell us what they feel. Try to be honest and just explain to us what you feel. Don't try to work out the reasons behind it if you want.
Yeah. So give us a bit of a feeling through a race where we were talking about it earlier on in the 90s. The radio sort of only worked when we went past the pits. There was nothing going on at the rest of the track. How often are you on the radio with a driver in a race?
Actually, for a young driver, it's even more draining for a race engineer, I would say, because we can't take anything for granted. So we have to make sure everything is always very within the rules, and we have to make sure everything is always clean.
Yeah.
There is, because I worked with, you mentioned Brendan Hartley or Daniel Ricciardo, drivers with more years of driving and experience. You don't have to remind them too much about hold the brake for the pit stops, make sure you don't cross the white line, make sure you respect the safety car rules. So these are the things you have to stay on top of. But during a race, you try to close your eyes a little bit during the first 2 laps, making sure you go through everything. You don't close them too hard now because you have to make sure you have enough energy to finish the first lap. And aside from that, during the race, we talk to them. Personally, I think I talk too much to the driver. I always debrief afterwards with them. I try to say...
And they say you talk too much.
Yeah, I was going to say...
Never happened. It's never happened, okay. But...
it's not too much then. You're okay.
At least, I don't know if they're honest or try to be nice. I try to help them as much as I can.
Yeah.
Obviously, you talk in a circumstance where it's possible to talk. You're not going to do that when they are fighting another car.
Yeah.
You're doing this on the long straights. And as you said, the radio quality now is so good that you can do that pretty much any time at any moment. And you try to help them. I had a meeting yesterday with Arvid about this for Melbourne. We talked about, if I told you about the line in this corner during the race, do you think that would have helped you to find a different way around it, a different balance, find a bit more pace? So you go through that process during the race.
And you're the medium. So does anyone else in the pit wall talk to the driver?
No.
Is that a rule?
It is a rule, yes.
Yeah.
And when the driver talk, no one can talk as well. We have another rule, which is driver has priority on everyone else.
Okay, so everyone else who's involved in the race strategy and everything hears what the driver has to say.
That's correct.
But you're hearing from the strategist.
Yes.
You're hearing from, who else are you hearing stuff from?
So we have strategists, we have a tire engineer, aerodynamics engineer. Our engineer feeding the most information will be our performance engineer, who is the biggest support for the race engineer. And then we
Do you want to just expand on what the performance, what's the difference between,
yes.
Most people would listen to that and
yes,
go, well, everything's performance.
Tire and aerodynamics is quite obvious topics.
Yeah.
Performance engineer is covering all the basics of, it's a bit of driver coaching if you want. So he will help me during the race, looking at where the driver is gaining or losing time. Is he braking harder or less hard than his teammates? Are we, like I just mentioned about the lines in Miami, Are we using different lines compared to competitors? So it's really giving me a picture of what Arvid is doing on track. Mm-hmm. And then it's for me to have that picture in mind and then to filter, or rather than filter, it's more prioritize what I feel is beneficial for him to go faster.
Yeah. With the performance engineer, is that more in the free practice than maybe in qualified, or is it still in the race that you're going to be getting that information, then feeding it to the driver to say you're braking too early or your line wrong here or there on the in the race?
It's still in the race.
It's still in the race as well.
Still in the race.
So there's a lot of information. Yeah.
And we maybe do it more with young drivers than you would do with an experienced driver. So maybe an experienced driver, or I imagine you would just tell him you're losing 1/10 in turn 1, and then you let him figure out a little bit how to find it.
Yeah,
we have to be a bit more precise if you want. I try to make sure that the information I bring to him, he knows what to do with it.
I'm going to play a little bit of a game with you here. If you were engineering Johnny Herbert, how do you think that he'd take driver coaching from during a race? Johnny, how would you deal with that?
Shut up, leave me alone. But I don't know. It's one of those that we didn't have that back in our day.
No. And if anybody said, do you mind doing this as a driver? I think that was seen as the driver's domain, not anything to do with the engineer.
No, but I think that's where it's shifted, because I think the data that you have abundance of nowadays, the data was us. We were the ones who were feeding you with the information that was going on in the car. We had a couple of squiggly lines in the sort of the early 90s, and it sort of ramped up as time went by. So it was us who were feeding you that information. Is that something that still happens though with the drivers? Do they still give you that extra feedback that sort of switches a sort of a light on and go,
very
actually,
much. Very much.
That's still important.
Yeah, and it's again a discussion I recently had with Arvid as well. What's important for us and where it becomes critical in terms of driver feedback is when we talk about car balance, and I'm sure you will know much better than me, but the driver will drive around the problem. Mm-hmm. So if you have instability, if you have too much understeer somewhere, you're going to do something with your driving to try to hide that problem. And sometimes it's not always obvious for the engineer. So what we see in our data doesn't tell the complete story. So that's where it becomes critical to have a driver who is able to explain to you the reason you see this or the reason this is happening is because the real problem on the car is what I feel.
So
here.
Go back to what you were saying as well, Damon.
That's with the subjective thing, isn't it? So I mean, I used to have I developed doing this with my engineer because they'd ask me, what the car was doing, and then I'd have to quantify. I'd say, well, to be honest, it wasn't a very good lap, but I'd give myself a 1 out of 5 as to how hard I was pushing, or whether it was a representative lap or not. So you could quantify those little bits, because I think it's an assumption that the driver is. Do you assume that the driver's going to push as hard as they can every time, or do you accept that the driver sometimes is going to be holding back a little bit or keeping a bit in reserve, because you're not always on the limit as a racing driver? I know it sounds like you should be, but you're not. It's not necessary sometimes.
So the truth is, we think they're always at the limit. That's what we probably perceive as an engineer when we are watching live.
Okay.
Having said that, we also set some boundaries. So if we have a weekend with P1, P2, P3, it has to be clear between you and your driver how much risk you want to take and how much effort we are going to make to get there. Yeah. On this topic, something very interesting we discussed many times in terms of we talk about track evolution and we talk about tire degradation, especially in qualifying. But in reality, you have the track getting faster, but also the drivers getting faster. So we have a driver evolution effectively. Yeah. And we always, every year, have that discussion in Monaco where we say, but a new tire is much better than just keeping the same tire and keep running around. But what we try to explain to the tire people is, okay, but there is maybe 4/10 of time in the driver by just keep running and keep pushing. And if you put him a new tire, it's only 1 or 2 tenths. So that's that's where this comes.
That's. I was going to mention Monaco because it's definitely one of those places where you do, and obviously sometimes you wonder whether if you kept the same tyres on and just went out a bit later, the track's evolved and the drivers had a chance to think about it. Yeah. Then they'd be quicker anyway, and it's this moving target you're working with, this subjective thing out on the track.
Yeah, that was always the moving target in Monaco. Is that still the most difficult one, or is there others that trump it?
I think Monaco, in terms of if the topic is specifically about qualifying, that's probably one of the most difficult tracks to manage.
Why?
So the first difficulty is traffic.
Yeah, of course.
And now we have 2 cars extra this year. Yeah. So if you have any tips,
2 extra cars,
I will take it. I think some drivers have discussed about splitting in groups and so on. I know the discussion has happened. I don't think that will happen.
No.
Yeah.
It's very difficult in terms of managing traffic, and otherwise it's about trying to be in a rhythm. You want to set a rhythm. You want to send the car. You want to be in a flow of being able to keep pushing, and you want the driver to find a rhythm to build up the confidence effectively.
Yeah, there's always I hear about the window, the performance of the tyre, trying to get that right, especially for qualifying. How difficult is that for you to inform the driver that they're ready to go?
So first thing I would say is what we think is ready and what the drivers think is ready doesn't always align. And it's a good process because sometimes it's like, oh, actually you were right. And the data are not always telling us the full story. And we've seen this many times. So to answer from my perspective, we use obviously the free practice sessions to find out effectively. We have a plan based on previous tracks, based on previous years. We come up with a plan, we try to follow that plan, and we adjust. And then the next layer is to try to see what the competitors are doing. So if you hear the drivers talking about power warm up, and then you have a couple of teams, first time lap, they manage to do a purple and on good laps, first thing you're going to do is take the GPS, take the onboard, what did they do differently? And what can I look at to make it better for me?
Is this going to be leading towards a kind of AI kind of going through myriad permutations, and it will be active during a session and going, well, we had a plan, but that now has to be plan Z or whatever it is, because so much has changed?
Well, I wish we had that to help us. It's not there yet.
Not yet.
So then you would be out of job as well.
I would hope I still can pick which option is.
You can turn it on and off anyway.
Yes, exactly. Well, you still need someone to talk to the driver. So I'm hoping I'm still here.
Yeah,
that's been really illuminating. Thank you very much, Pierre, for that. But I mean, it's not all about engineering; it's about competition, and you've been involved in some, exciting moments when your driver has been up there on the podium and even won races. So tell us what that was like.
So my first podium obviously was with Pierre Gasly in Brazil when we drag raced Lewis up the hill to the line. Mm-hmm. So this, for me personally in my career, was a big step because we remain a midfield team, and we are also bringing up young drivers. So being able to achieve that with Pierre. Also, Pierre was coming back from Red Bull Racing, and he had there was Antoine in Spa that year as well, which really affected Pierre. So that was a big milestone for me personally and for that relationship between me and Pierre Gasly. And then obviously we had the win in Monza, which was the next very big thing. Winning a race remain. I know some people win many races. For our team to
who wins loads of races, Johnny?
The best ones. Generally.
We've had a few between us.
I've had a few between us. I know. Well, I can add my few to your more.
That's not something I was used to. So that's also in Italy. Obviously, we have a base in Italy. So that was quite extraordinary for all our mechanics and their families to be able to do that there.
Excellent. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And
how stressful was that for everybody, that race? Because it was an interesting race, wasn't it? It wasn't a straightforward race at all.
Actually, I have a funny story about this because I always try to stay professional, and we stick to the basics and try to keep keep helping the driver and get to the line and do the best as we can.
Yeah.
The funniest thing in that moment, once we cross the line, obviously you have everyone going very happy.
Mad.
Yeah. Bonkers.
Yes.
As we say.
But in my position, it was very difficult to follow that, because the first thing you think is, okay, after the race, I'm going to go to the FIA. They're going to check the car, check the plank wear, check the bodywork is at the right place, check the car weight is correct. And you go through all of this, and it's like, until I've got that paper, which is telling me that's official, I won't be able to quite be there yet. So that was the first thing which came to my mind in that occasion.
Yeah.
And then obviously we had the podium with Isack in Lindblad, which was again an amazing thing. Amazing for him, amazing for the team, on a big milestone in our, let's say, Racing Bull generation, if you want.
And you've got Arvid now. What's Arvid's strength? I mean, he's been incredibly impressive as arriving into. What's his strength? What's the things you see now in him that are showing signs of his ability to progress in this sport?
I think what I appreciated to start with is that when on track he showed us those very good laps. You know, sometimes it takes a little while to get a driver to show you he's able to get most of the car and get it in Q3 or get that one lap. He comes on the radio and he's like, okay, this was everything. And I think he reached that point quite early in his career, and he showed the team and he showed me personally that he's able to have those very good moments on those strong laps. Obviously for us now, working together is to try to achieve this more often, consistently, on how to reach that target. As a driver, I think he's very switched on technically. And I come back to your previous question about sometimes the driver, go deep into the data and try to understand what's happening. It's where I have to step in and make sure where the boundaries are. So he understands everything very, very well, but we need to reach a point where, okay, now it's for us to tell you how to do it and leave it to us, because you also need the energy to drive tomorrow. He's very active with the team, in terms of giving us feedback to help us with all the little things which we may miss. So, there is little bugs with the dash, LEDs, or the mirror is doing this. It's very accurate, I would say.
How easy is that to overload a driver nowadays? Is it, if you just keep feeding, it's they're almost going to explode? Is there a point sometimes you feel they're getting close to that?
I have a bit of a rule with them. So when we talk technical, I give them 2 or 3, and then we have to just stop. Okay. And then they can move on to watch on boards or go to do something else and come back.
Okay. So you literally say to them, right, goodbye, we'll see you later.
It does happen.
Yeah, go and have a cup of tea or something.
It has happened.
Oh, you would have had no trouble with me. I would have been off. I've been, biscuits, cup of tea. I'd be happy.
I would have had a Mars bars.
Sometimes it's good to have a bit of a reset.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
And I've got good proof for that. A sprint weekend. We had a sprint weekend in Miami. We have a sprint weekend again in Canada. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to imagine a driver. You go from P1 to quali, to sprint race, to quali, to race, who will spend all these hours just keep digging into data and digging into what can I do better in the next session.
Right.
But you need to have that energy for the next session.
Yeah. I've got a question then. You have a normal Grand Prix weekend, the free practices, qualifying race. Then when you have the sprint race, of course, it's a very different thing. You have a free practice, qualifying, race, qualifying, race. Is it more stressful when it's a sprint weekend or a normal Grand Prix weekend?
It is more stressful, that's for sure. Okay. Because as much as I'd love to say our pre-event simulation work on simulator work on preparation is absolutely amazing, the amount of things we can do. It's never quite as good as being on track on trying it out. So there's key things which you find out in practice sessions, which you can't completely find out in your simulator. And having only a single FP1 without the rest of the practice, it makes it very difficult, very challenging. And I think also it's changing a little bit your mindset in terms of what you do with the car on the risk-reward approach. So you would a standard weekend, you probably will go with a setup where you maybe say, okay, in FP1 I can take a bit of a risk. I'm going to do this and this with a setup and see if that's okay. If that's not okay, I can come back from it. I would say in the sprint weekend, you can't really take this too far. You have to be a little bit more careful.
Arvid, is he got future world champion potential, do you think? What do you think of Arvid? You don't have to answer that because we've got Arvid here who can tell us what he thinks of you.
It's been fun working with Pierre, you know. For me, it's been really cool to see how competitive he is, you know, how much he wants to do well. You know, when things haven't gone well, when there's not a good session, I'm obviously, you know, annoyed. But to also see that he's just as frustrated as well has been really cool. You know, also, for sure, when, you know, you're in the fight, you know, we're all trying to figure things out. To have someone in your corner that you know wants it as badly as you really is really good. And, you know, it's a nice feeling, you know, to be in it together and to know that you have that guy that sort of backs you and believes in you. And I think that for me has been a big thing that's been made the relationship and made, you know, working with Pierre that bit more special, because I know that he wants to do well just as much as I do.
Well, that's a good report.
That was a very good report.
How do you feel now?
Yes, I feel good.
Good.
Well, I hope it kind of backs up what we've been discussing so far.
Yeah.
That how you build that relationship and how you try to make it work and make the driver trust you. I think he's got all the ingredients to be world champion. That's for sure. He's still very young in the process, and like I said before, he showed us many very good moments already on track. I know it's maybe difficult to see for people who just watch a race and you don't finish very well or you don't finish at all. We have issues along the way. But as a team, we have recognized that there's been these very good moments, these very good laps, and we had a few issues on our side of the garage in terms of missing mileage and a few problems, which didn't help him personally. But we keep pushing together, and for sure we have a big potential in hands. That's for sure.
Yeah, it must be nice for you in many respects. You know, we talk about Bono. He was with Lewis for many years, but you're only there together for a couple of years in many respects, aren't you? Where
that's true.
You're seeing the very beginnings. You move them to a certain point in their careers, and then they're gone. Mm-hmm. So, but for you, it's refreshing every couple of years, which must be nice. You prefer that side of it, or would you rather be stuck with the driver for a little bit longer?
It's a good question. So the longest I've stayed with the driver was with Pierre Gasly.
Yeah.
And we obviously had great number of years, not only because we are both French, which helps.
Did you? I was going to ask this.
Yes.
Were you told not to speak in French? I suppose in a French team you'd be speaking French and it was okay. But some of the engineering, they get you to speak in English, don't they?
I would have thought.
It's funny because I see these questions. Many people ask online, why they're not talking French on the radio? So we talk French when we are just together, and it was the same with Isack last year. But as long as there is someone else with us, or as long as we are in the office or in a more professional environment, let's put it that way, we very much talk English, and we don't want others to miss any important information. So it's very super important.
I've got an example of something like that when I was racing with Alain Prost, who came to race with Williams, but of course we had Renault engines, so he would speak to the Renault engineers in French, and you had to tell him off.
Did he listen?
Literally,
Did he
David
listen?
Brown said, "Sorry, Alan, English only."
Oh yeah, he would have played the game.
Can you imagine how difficult that would be to speak to another French person, and you know it's going to be easier if I speak French, you know. But anyway, we had to find the English words, poor chap. Anyway, but a bit of fun.
Yeah.
But so good. So now you've sent these little ducklings off into the world. You still got Arvid, but Isack, a bit very emotional driver, isn't he? Would you say? And he's gone off now, and he's had his first kind of difficult race, I'd say, Miami. What's your view of what he has to do to make it in the big team at the Red Bull main team?
Isack is very passionate about the sport, and I think if he just keeps doing what he's been doing so far with us, there is no reason he cannot continue as he started. He's got actually, pretty good qualifying with Red Bull Racing. It's been a bit of a tough fight at the top of the, in the top 10 in Q3 with Alpine, which is competitive this year, with Ferrari, which is a bit of an in-between as well, with obviously Mercedes and the McLaren maybe a little bit ahead. To me, just carry on doing what you're doing so far.
Okay, well, listen, we got Canada coming up now. Any predictions? How's things going to go?
I hope it's test dry, because we still haven't had a wet race with these new regulations.
Well, what do you think about that? Yeah. I mean, we were looking at maybe one in Miami, and I had the impression that with this the torque they have with the electric motor, it's going to be really tricky, isn't it?
It will be difficult. So we have a lot of power and we have less grip.
Yeah.
We still haven't really driven the weight on the inter tires a lot. Obviously, there's been some Pirelli tests in Fiorano with Ferrari. We have done one in Suzuka. So there is a few things which Pirelli has looked at to help the teams as well. But, when you go on a new track with inter weights, already last year is still always something slightly different. This year is going to be a big thing. So we're talking drivability. We're talking, we've got all this discussion about turbo lag. As you know, in the weight with very low grip, if you don't have the power you're asking for at the right time, that makes it very difficult on all the upshift, downshift, and all these usual topics.
Well, I think especially in Canada as well, it's quite a
tricky
old track.
Apparently.
And the roads are not far.
The date is earlier, so it's potentially. I was just speaking to someone from Montreal and they were saying that, the good chance it could be wet, but could be wet in June as well. It could be wet any time.
It could be any time, exactly.
But anyway, listen, good luck for
the
up-and-coming races, and thank you very, very much for coming and talking to us and filling in a lot of blanks so that our listeners have a better understanding of the sport. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I hope it helped to inform a little more on what we do.
Yeah, we're actually, we just want to learn. It's just for our benefit more than anything else.
Yes. No, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much, Pierre. Right, well, that's it for this episode of Stay on Track. Was a good one, wasn't it, Johnny?
It was a good one, and I think we're going to have many, many more come our way.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to see you again soon.
Yes, exactly.
The next
for sure.
one. When is it coming? In a while.
Yeah, in a while.